Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Scottish Labour are calling for an investigation and a summit and to find out the reasons behind the SNP's inability to spend all those millions of pounds of EU funds. It's not often I totally agree with what the Scottish Labour are doing, but in this case I'm absolutely on board with this idea of having this summit and getting SNP ministers to answer direct questions as to this appalling ineptitude. That's assuming, of course, it is ineptitude and not deliberate. I personally think they deliberately didn't spend it because I think they didn't want to spend it. They didn't want to invest that money into Scotland to improve people's lives, because if they'd have spent it and made things a little bit better, people wouldn't be miserable. People wouldn't be in as bad a position. Maybe there'd be less poverty. And of course, if you've got happy, non-poverty ridden people, they probably wouldn't vote for the SNP. The SNP want poverty, want misery, want a degenerate society, so they can point to Westminster and say, that's what they've done. Vote for us and we'll change it. And if that is the case, then it just goes to show how evil these people are. They could help, and they choose not to. They can afford to help, but they won't. Let's have a look to see what's going on. And like I say, it's not often I agree with Labour, but this time, bang on. Here goes. So, Scottish Labour calls for an emergency summit on the SNP's £240 million in unspent EU funds. And this is the really big thing, because they haven't spent it, they've got to hand it all back. There's certain rules, and it's either they've deliberately, as I say, done it, or they're so ineptitude, so filled with ineptitude that they've failed to do it. Either way, that disbars them from office. They are either too stupid to do it or too evil. They should not be in charge. Although Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes gave a deeply muddled explanation of exactly how much money Scotland is due to return to Brussels, there's still a few days left to spend at least some of this windfall. But they won't. Imagine that. Imagine an SNP minister not understanding what was needed to be done and failing to explain properly the position. I know, scarcely bears thinking about, doesn't it? Given how open, honest and transparent they've always been. The SNP has been accused of playing fast and loose with Scotland's finances as Labour calls for an emergency summit on the missing millions in unspent EU funds. A bombshell report revealed the Scottish Government was expected to return 28% of the European structural and investment funding it received over the past 6 years, having failed to allocate the money. This was said to add up to a colossal £450 million. They could have spent the money. They could have made things better. They could have improved lives. But that would go against their policy of increasing misery, because they want it. They want the people of Scotland pushed down so that they can constantly blame Westminster for it. But here we have final clinching proof. It is not Westminster, it is the SNP doing this deliberately. And if you're an SNP voter, think about this. You're voting for a party that is doing it deliberately, is deliberately harming your lifestyle, is deliberately impoverishing you, is deliberately making things worse for your children and your grandchildren. It's not accidental. It's deliberate. They had the money. They chose not to do it. Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes vehemently disputed the figures, because of course she will. I don't recognise those figures. No, Kate, you don't, do you? Because recognising them would mean that you knew that they were there. Of course you recognise them. You knew. That's why you're explaining it now badly, trying to gloss over, smoke and mirrors, deflect, because you know the truth is so appallingly damaging. Although MSP said she had given a deeply muddled explanation over these figures. Meanwhile, a separate briefing from civil servants suggested the sum due to be handed back to Brussels at the end of June was just over £250 million, or about £250 million. But actually, it's probably going to be higher because you know that they lie, you know. In addition, the SNP administration has already returned hundreds of millions of pounds to the bloated EU. Oh, so it's going to be a lot more than what they say. So they've already given hundreds of millions that could have been used in places, you know, to say, build a hospital, repair some roads, knock up a bridge, you know, the sort of things it was actually meant to be spent on. Now, Scottish Labour's finance spokesman Michael Mara has written to Miss Forbes to call for a cross-party push to allocate as much of the public cash as possible in the coming days. But she will not do that. God forbid you make life better. He writes, while the information you provided to Parliament was deeply muddled, the EU's own data platform indicates that up to €280 million may still be available to us. This is money that Scotland will permanently lose out on if it remains unallocated. Mr Marrett is calling for the SNP government to work with other Holyrood parties, as well as local governments, health boards and transport bodies in a last-ditch attempt to spend the money. Now, this is just typical of the SNP. They can waste millions on shit like little pretendy embassies and sending Angus round the world. But when it comes to something major like infrastructure, like something actually important, they haven't got a clue, because that's grown-up adult politics, not children pretendy politics. And that is why Scotland is in the shit state it's in. 17 years of these clowns running the circus. He says, we need an emergency summit to agree a plan to stop this money being handed back at a time when public finances are so severely overstretched. From this farce to their shambolic manifesto, the SNP's incompetence is threatening household finances and public finances alike. The SNP, he says, cannot keep playing fast and loose with public money and with people's livelihoods. And he's absolutely bloody right. Have a whole thing and then point the finger. Now, I'm going to suggest that this isn't necessarily Kate Forbes' fault, personally, but she's the minister responsible. She's got to deal with it. Who is responsible? Well, it's 86, isn't it? Shona Robertson, she's been there long enough. She'll have known, but, you know, she doesn't know how to tie her own shoelaces. Never mind invest in a major infrastructure project. I could have spent it in a couple of days, and I'd have spent it well. Anyway, we'll come up. Such levels of incompetence don't come as a surprise, but it's the sheer scale of the harm they do. This is nearly, it's going to be £500 million. You've got Biffa this week, 200 million, just Biffa. You wait till the other ones get in, the supermarkets and everything. There's going to be another £500 million up in smoke because these incompetents don't know what they're doing. And this is just in the last couple of weeks. Go back 17 years. I bet it's hundreds of billions thrown away, wasted by incompetent retards who keep getting away with it because of all the other retards who keep voting them into office time and time again. And that's when they're not busy killing tens of thousands of people. Yes, they killed me granny and they've screwed me economy, but I'm going to still vote for them because I'm retarded. That's your average SNP voter. Yeah, I'm too stupid to understand what they're doing. Tick the box, because I'm dim. Wake up, look around you, see the harm. £1 billion in a matter of weeks. Gone. Because idiots keep ticking the little yellow box. What a bunch. Think how much better Scotland would have been if the SNP had never existed. Anyway, I'll stop. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment. Please share the video. And remember, if you are an SNP voter, seek help. Do it today. Improve your lives. Bye.